The question is no longer what could happen. The real question is this: are we standing at the edge of a new global confrontation? Hello everyone. Today, a single strategic move has sent shockwaves through diplomatic, military, and intelligence circles across the world. Russia has reportedly deployed naval warships and a submarine to escort an oil tanker in waters where U.S. authorities had previously attempted to take action against that same vessel. This is not routine security. This is power, pressure, and global politics colliding in real time. What actually happened? According to multiple reports, the tanker in question had been under scrutiny by U.S. officials for legal and regulatory reasons. Enforcement action was reportedly being considered. But now, that same tanker is moving under direct Russian military protection. That means Russian service warships above and a submarine operating silently below. The message could not be clearer. Any further move against that tanker is no longer just a legal matter. It becomes a strategic decision with global consequences. Why this is a big deal: commercial vessels are typically protected by coast guards, private contractors, or maritime security firms. Deploying a submarine, however, is something else entirely. Submarines are not defensive decorations. They are strategic weapons. This level of protection is used when a nation wants to send a message without firing a single shot. Analysts say the move represents a calculated display of power, a direct response to international pressure, and a signal aimed squarely at Washington. In short, this is not maritime security. This is geopolitical messaging. A crisis without gunfire, yet no war has been declared. No missiles have been launched. But the military positioning looks eerily similar to what the world has seen during major international crises in the past. History shows us that moments like this don't begin with explosions, they begin with miscalculations. One misunderstanding, one misread signal, one wrong decision at sea, and diplomacy can instantly turn into confrontation. Security experts are already describing this situation as a form of cold conflict on the ocean, a dangerous scenario. Imagine this. U.S. forces move to stop or inspect the tanker. Russian naval units are already in position. A submarine remains undetected beneath the surface at that point. The issue would no longer be about one ship. It would become a test of resolve between two global superpowers. Not words, not statements, but actions. What message is Russia sending? Analysts say this move communicates three unmistakable points. First, Russia will defend its interests at the highest military level. Second, economic pressure and restrictions will not halt its operations. Third, it is prepared to visibly project naval power if necessary. This is not an official threat, but it is a strategic warning. What happens next? The next phase may not involve open conflict. Instead, we could see intensified diplomatic pressure, expanded naval surveillance, increased intelligence activity, and quiet negotiations behind closed doors. Because in today's world, a single maritime incident can become a global headline in minutes. This is not a movie scene. This is real-world geopolitics, where submarines are not just machines. They are silent messages. The real question is not whether Russia and the United States will go to war. The real question is, who blinks first? The biggest strategy behind the move is it's not just about one tanker. Analysts believe this operation fits into a broader strategic pattern. Russia is signaling that it will actively protect its shipping routes, challenge pressure placed on its trade, and use visible military presence to support economic interests. In modern geopolitics, control over energy and transportation routes is not simply business. It is power. Why energy and shipping? Matter oil tankers are not just vessels. They are moving pillars of the global economy. Any disruption can rattle supply chains, increase market volatility, and trigger political reactions far beyond the region involved. By escorting this tanker with warships and a submarine, Russia is effectively declaring that its trade is a strategic priority. A commercial issue has now become a geopolitical confrontation. The U.S. response: a difficult calculation from Washington's perspective. The situation presents no easy options. Enforcing regulations risks escalation. Backing down risks setting a precedent. Every move is weighed not just against law, but against global perception, deterrence, and credibility. What happens next may not be decided on the ocean alone, but in strategy rooms, economic corridors, and diplomatic back channels. And the world is watching, so what do you think? Is this simply power politics at work? Or are we witnessing the early stages of a new global standoff? The United States now faces a narrow set of options, and none of them are without risk. Option 1. Increase monitoring and diplomatic pressure. Option 2. Rally allies and international institutions to present a unified response. Option 3. Avoid direct confrontation while maintaining a visible strategic presence. What is clear is this: any visible escalation could raise global tensions dramatically. That reality explains why, so far, every official statement has been measured, restrained, and carefully worded. This is a situation where words matter and actions matter even more. The danger zone. Misinterpretation history shows that major confrontations rarely begin with clear intent. More often they begin with misunderstanding. A maneuver seen as defensive by one side can appear aggressive to the other. And when warships, submarines, aircraft, and surveillance systems operate in close proximity, now the margin for error becomes dangerously small. This is why military analysts around the world are watching every movement, not because they expect war, but because they are trying to prevent an incident. No one officially wants a single radar lock, a misread signal, an unexpected maneuver. In environments like this, escalation does not need permission. Global reaction. A watching world. The major powers are paying close attention. If one nation can successfully protect its commercial operations with direct military force, it may encourage others to adopt similar strategies. That could reshape how global trade moves across the oceans. More armed escorts for commercial shipping, more naval deployments in contested waters, more economic activity conducted under military protection. Not declared conflict, but militarized commerce. A world where trade routes increasingly operate under the shadow of warships, not treaties. What this could mean for the future. This moment may represent a turning point, a future where economic pressure is answered not just with diplomacy, but with strategic deployment, where trade routes become zones of silent competition, where influence is measured not only in contracts and markets, but in naval reach and deterrence. In such a world, diplomacy must work harder than ever, not to stop open warfare, but to manage positioning, signaling, and restraint. Because modern conflict does not always arrive loudly. History's quiet at beginnings. History does not always announce itself with explosions. Sometimes it begins quietly with a ship, an escort, and a message sent beneath the waves. The tanker continues its journey. The submarines remain unseen, and the world watches, waiting for the next move. Because the real question is no longer what happened. The real question is, what happens next? Is this the beginning of a new balance of power at sea, or simply another chapter in the long, unresolved story of global rivalry? The larger picture: we have seen the confrontation take shape on the water. We have uncovered the strategy behind the move, and now we confront something even larger: how one tanker, one escort, and one silent submarine could influence the world far beyond the battlefield. The economic shockwaves. This situation is not only military, it is deeply economic. Energy flows, shipping stability, market confidence. When trade becomes strategic and strategy becomes militarized, the consequences ripple far beyond the ocean, into economies, alliances, and global power structures. And that is why this moment matters, not because of what has already happened, but because of what it may set in motion. Energy transport is the backbone of global markets. Even the perception of risk to major shipping routes can rattle investor confidence, drive up insurance premiums, and raise concerns about long-term supply stability. Markets do not react only to events, they react to expectations. And right now, expectations are clouded by uncertainty. Energy pressure and global impact on energy routes become political pressure points. The effects are felt worldwide, not because supply has stopped, but because the possibility of disruption changes behavior. Governments, corporations, and financial institutions begin asking difficult questions. Will shipping remain secure? Will costs rise? Will political tensions reshape global trade patterns? This is how a single maritime incident can ripple outward, influencing fuel prices, transportation costs, and economic forecasts far beyond the region involved. Alliances and diplomatic calculations. This development is also being closely watched by global alliances. Partners on all sides are weighing their positions carefully. For many nations, the issue is not who is right or wrong, but how to protect their own interests without being drawn into a broader standoff behind closed doors. Discussions are likely centered on de-escalation, maritime safety, and preventing a commercial dispute from escalating into a political crisis. The objective is not victory, it is containment. The risk of normalization. One of the most serious concerns raised by analysts is this: what happens if militarily escorted commerce becomes normal? If more nations begin protecting trade with warships and submarines, a global system could shift toward heavier naval presence in key corridors, increase strategic competition over shipping lanes, in an environment where economic activity unfolds under constant military observation. Not open conflict, but a persistent atmosphere of pressure. The silent chessboard. What we are witnessing is not confrontation, it is positioning. Every movement is calculated. Every response is measured. Every statement is carefully worded. This is diplomacy and power playing out like a global chess match, where the most decisive moves are often the quietest ones, made far from public view. The next phase may not bring dramatic headlines, but rather revised maritime regulations, adjusted trade routes, and intensified behind-the-scenes negotiations, because all sides understand a critical reality. The cost of miscalculation today would extend far beyond the ocean. How history really turns history does not always pivot on battles. Sometimes it turns on decisions made in silence, on ships that keep moving, and on signals sent beneath the surface of the sea. The world is not watching for war. It is watching for the next signal. Because this story is no longer just about a tanker. It is about how power, trade, and strategy will shape the future global order. And the most important question is no longer who acted first, but how the world chooses to respond next. Part B. The military reality beneath the surface. We have seen the confrontation emerge. We have explored the strategy behind it. We have examined the economic and diplomatic consequences. Now we reach the most sensitive layer of all, the military reality beneath the waves. Why naval power still decides the game in an era of satellites, cyber warfare, and advanced technology. One truth remains unchanged. Control of the sea means control of movement, trade, and influence. Oceans are not just geography. They are strategic corridors. Securing them does not simply protect ships, it protects national leverage. The message behind the submarines are not deployed for visibility. They are deployed for deterrence. Their presence sends a message without words. We are watching. We are prepared. Think carefully before you act. This is not about confrontation. It is about shaping decisions before confrontation becomes necessary. A shift in military doctrine. Military analysts believe this moment reflects a broader shift in strategy. Instead of reacting after pressure is applied, nations are increasingly positioning assets in advance, placing forces in key areas before a crisis fully develops. This raises the cost of intervention, slows rivals' decision-making, and transforms political disputes into strategic calculations. Not escalation by force, but influence through presence. The danger of proximity but increased presence brings increased risk. When warships, aircraft, surveillance systems, and submarines operate in close quarters, even routine maneuvers can be misinterpreted. History shows that most major crises do not begin with intention, they begin with misunderstanding. That is why militaries now emphasize communication, discipline, and restraint, not because conflict is desired, but because it must be prevented. The new maritime reality, what may be emerging, is a new norm, a world where strategic waterways are constantly monitored, commercial routes carry political weight, and military assets quietly accompany economic activity. Not declared war but constant readiness. This is not the world of past conflicts. This is competition without declarations. What militaries are really watching, defense planners are not just tracking ships. They are analyzing patterns, intent signals, and responses to presence. In modern strategy, behavior matters as much as firepower. Every deployment asks the question, is this protection or a message? Looking ahead, the next stage is unlikely to arrive with explosions or dramatic announcements. It will unfold through adjusted naval doctrines, expanded patrols, and deeper coordination among allies. The objective on all sides remains the same: protect interests without crossing a line that cannot be uncrossed. The oceans appear calm. The ships keep moving. The submarines remain unseen. But beneath that calm lies a silent contest of patience, strategy, and power. This is not about who fires first. It is about who shapes the future without firing at all. Because in today's world, the most consequential battles are not fought with explosions, but with positioning, presence, and restraint. And the final question remains, are we entering an era where power is measured not by what is used, but by what is deliberately held back?